Get started. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Fran, have you started the? Very good. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm with Paul. I look around this morning, I see a lot of familiar faces. It lets me know my community answered the call. Thank you. And for those of you online who I can't see, thank you for being here as well. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Teresa Fletcher Brown, and I have the privilege of serving as an EEO officer and director of compliance programs here. I'm your host for today's Black History Month edition of Common Ground. Common Ground was started by the EEO unit in 2021 as a platform for discussions on diversity and inclusion topics in the workplace. And it fills me with personal pride to say we have been going strong as we enter into our sixth. We're excited to welcome back our speaker for today's discussion, and I don't want to stand in the way of getting that discussion started, but there are a couple of commercial and housekeeping items that I need to address first. Today's event is co-sponsored by Santo Chicago, and I would be remiss for not mentioning their continued commitment to the Common event that the EEO will host over the years, including this. Thank you, Santo Chicago President Nora Leerhsen and Vice President Leticia Nieto. I know she's probably running around somewhere. Double thank you to Leticia and her team for being co-collaborating with Common Ground. It is literally a production to put together events like this. And these events are not even possible without their tireless efforts. So to Leticia Nieto, Carrie Ann Sixana, Gabrielle Fuentes, and the entire team, many thanks for all that you do. Now, just a few housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded. So I would like to ask everyone to please take a moment now to silence your phones, radio, so the recording time will stop. For our operations personnel, or if you're in person, thank you for being here. I recognize and dedicate the case or mayor a phone call or respond to your rating. I kindly ask that you do so by stepping outside and return to the room after the call has. And if you're joining us online via Zoom, please remain muted to eliminate any background noise as well. Finally, I would like to introduce by way of the bio the facilitator for today's discussion, Joe Cujo. Joe has been a dedicated graphic designer with the Chicago Transit Authority for over 20 years, contributing to a wide range of projects, including bus and rail lines, customer alerts, brochures, maps, campaigns, and posts. Joe takes pride in creating work that serves the city and the millions who move through it every day. Beyond his role as CTA, Joe is also a fine art and a muralist whose multidisciplinary practice reflects humanity, humor, and the rhythm of city life. Rooted in connection and community, he is a co-founder of the Inglewood Arts Collective, voted Best Art Group by the Chicago Reader for 5 consecutive years. His extensive list of clients and collaborators include Pullman National Historical Park, the Chicago Bears, the Chicago White Sox, Walmart, Morris Beer, and Nike, amongst others. Through his work, Joe brings color, character, and pride to the spaces that help define Chicago. Now it is my pleasure to turn the program over to CTA Acting President Nora Leerhsen.
Glory.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I think everyone is really excited to be here. You can kind of feel it in the room. I've been running into people all month saying, I'm coming to that Dilla thing at the end of the month. We're so excited to have you here. This is probably, you all know a lot about our guest speaker here, and that's why you're here. But of course, we know that Sherman Dilla Thomas is what I would call an internationally renowned historian, storyteller, preservationist, and cultural commentator of our time. I think he is taking on a bigger role as the days pass by in our local discussion and in the national discussion. And I just am so excited that we at CTA can say he's a bit of a regular here. We've had you at previous Common Grounds experiences. We also had you on our Moving Experiences podcast. which really ups our viewership, what we got there as well. And, you know, I think I want to get to the discussion, but what I want to say just on a personal note, and I'm a student of history, and Dilla and I have connected on that before. And I think we all know history matters in really profound ways to understanding our current times. But what I find so moving about what you do, Dilla, is I see how uplifting you are to people around you. And we talk about complex issues, our complex history, but you move people forward in a way that brings hope. And not every historian can do that. A lot of people can rattle off historical facts. Not every historian can potentially heal wounds, can bring people together, and to give us a path forward in the future in some very challenging times. So we are so lucky to have you here. And I want to thank you for coming, and I want to get to it. Of course, Joe is, of course, one of our treasures at CTA, and Teresa did a great job of also telling us about Joe. So let's get to it. Thank you all for being here.
Man. So I don't talk a whole lot. I'm usually in the background of things. And when I got a call from Teresa, she asked me if I wanted to moderate this discussion with Dilla. I was like, yeah. As soon as I hung up the phone, I was like, boy, what did you do? You know, that's the same voice I use when I talk to my son. Yeah, this man is like been changing the game on so many levels. Your show is amazing. He's talked to everybody from mayors to rappers that I admire to our president. And I'm like, yo, I'm a little nervous. And then randomly last week, I must have bumped into you like 3 times in one day. And I'm like, that must be God or the universe saying, chill out. Like, you're where you're supposed to be at. And I get here and I see so many familiar faces and people that I've like known for like years, like not just coworkers, but friends and family. And that further lets me know that I'm where I'm supposed to be at. Yeah, thank you for coming out here for the 3rd time and spending time with my other family.
I'm gonna eventually get a venture card out to get at some point.
So how are you, man? How you doing?
I try not to be negative when I answer that question. On the one hand, I'm healthy, the kids are cool. Some kind of weird way, I'm living a life where my passion is my business. And so in those instances, I'm amazing. But I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm grumpy and I don't get no damn sleep. I gotta like reread every email anybody sends or sends on my behalf. And this, you know, I don't enjoy that part of it. I didn't know that wanting to echo Chicago stories came with, you know, on-job training of an MBA without the paperwork, right? So, so you know, I'm all of those things.
Okay, so when did you realize that urban history could become more than just a passion, but like a business?
I still kind of don't realize it now. If I'm being honest, I just thought that our generation and the generation following us just didn't know Chicago's real stories. When I was, you know, a lot younger and sitting at the table with my parents and his siblings, it just seemed like they knew all these things that I'm talking about now. And so what I did know is that if you didn't see somebody doing something, you should step up and do it if you have that capability. You know, not to be morbid, man, but on my grandpa's deathbed, he was like, yo, if you die and you didn't leave everything you could, then you wasted your life, bro. And he was like at just such peace. He had like just gave so much of himself via his church, via his job to his family. And so I think that is like what led me to wanting to be a public historian. I'm like I said, wasn't quite sure on how I would make any money off of it.
Okay. When you started telling these stories that, like Nora said, uplifts people, it made Chicagoans even more prouder to be from Chicago. Like, what problems were you trying to solve or felt that wasn't being addressed?
Anytime you, particularly and humbly, very, very humbly, prior to me, if you like looked at Chicago online, about 80% of it was going to be negative. It was going to be some regurgitation of some crime stat or some retelling of some gangs killing for the 500th time, or it's Al Capone. And I thought that was a serious problem. And then I also like recognized that, there's a power in the tongue. There's a power in words. Words have an energy, right?
Yeah.
So the problem I was trying to solve was, how can I put more positive things out about Chicago? How can I invoke a sense of civic pride? To be really specific, I thought that people had a narrow perspective of Chicago. And if I could help change the perspective of Chicago, then I could help bring more respect for Chicago. And then it's really hard to be crappy to anything you respect. And so I think that was like the problem solving angle I was aiming for.
I'm gonna deviate a little bit. Do you feel like as Chicagoans, like we're underdogs?
I do. I believe part of it is our fault. I'll give you an example, right? I do neighborhood tours. Shameless plug. You can come take a tour with me. But even as I said that, I promise you, 50% of the room unconsciously said, "I know everything I need to know about Chicago. I lived here my whole life." No, like that's the thing that I'm up against, and so I think because we're not fully aware of what Chicago has been capable of and what Chicago is capable of, then that puts us in an underdog sort of place. And then when you go out to the rest of the world, for sure, we're an underdog, right? When you're on the East Coast, when you're on the West Coast, when I go internationally, and I say Chicago, there's always like one of those,
Yeah.
right? Like as if we're less than. So I would say Chicago for sure is an underdog city.
Okay. Going back to your growth and your career, like what early decisions, good or bad, like help shape your business and your success?
Man, my best friend in the world is outside that door. I wish he was in here to hear it. Because there you go. Not listening to him sometime was like the greatest thing in some instances, right? When we first started, I was great example. They're gonna be pissed. They thought that folks wouldn't be able to say six-figure Dilla, right? They thought that there was gonna be some tongue slippage, And so when the page first took off, they were like emphatic, bro. You got to change that name, man. You got to be like History Dilla or Chicago Dilla or something. And I'm like, nah, bro, I'm gonna be six-figure Dilla. Then I kept telling them, like, give me 3 more months, I'll change it. Then I was like, well, wait till they verify my page because it's finna be verified. Now I want to mess that up. And then after it got verified, I'm like, well, man, what if they take the verification away if I change it? So I just kept like pushing the cart on them. But I think the uniqueness of that username touches young folks and it allows them to to tap in. Just when you see that username, you're like, oh, what six-figure deal? And it makes you want to click. So in some instances, right, like being really confident in my decision. Or another one was, they thought we needed to lease the bus a little more before trying to purchase one. This is a big ordeal, man. When it breaks, it's expensive. It's expensive to wrap. You got to have, IDOT number on the side, MC, like it's all kind of stuff. But I figured we'd have control over it. What was happening was I'd book a tour and the bus company would cancel on me because somebody else was offering more money. And so now me and 45 people standing outside of DuSable and I'm looking stupid and I just thought the risk was better. On the other hand, right, slow down, Dilla, sometime, right? Hey, you moving too fast. And so listening to them because I can't see the pace I'm moving at from the vantage point that they can see the pace, right? Or being willing to delegate. I think that's one of the problems that I'm having now because, it's like when you that first time parent, when you had that first kid, can't nobody take that baby out your hands, you sleeping with the baby, you know what I mean? By the time you at like kid number 3, you don't even know where the baby's at half the time. Are they in this damn room? Like, I know we brought them in the house. Didn't hear the alarm go off, right? My first entrepreneur baby, I think one of the challenges I'm having is kind of taking my hands off of stuff because I can't do everything. And trying to do everything impedes our growth. It impedes our ability to scale. And so I have to learn to be more trusting. So I'll say that those are the two major things. But you know, over the course of time, and to give my friends credit, they particularly that one in the back, they started to be like, you know, it's difficult, right? You grow up with me and you see idiot Dilla at 19, idiot Dilla at 20, idiot Dilla at 23. And then like all of a sudden it's 40-year-old dude making sense. It's gonna take you a little while to like trust what I'm doing. So it's been a dance, and I think that we're all learning from it.
Absolutely. I had that same problem sometimes.
Yeah.
People, like my whole high school years, I was a goofball. I'm still a clown, but like I'm doing more things. And like, you know, you see me, I'm like with my group and we're like doing community stuff and giving back. And, you know, it's people that grew up with me, they like, yo, like, why, how? Like, it makes no sense.
Almost being insulted. Like, what you mean, how, man? Like, had a whole time, like, you know.
So how do you balance authenticity and staying true to stories while building something financially stable?
I don't really care about the financially stable part because you won't be able to do both. Don't say a name. Don't say a name. I'm just telling it to myself so I don't say a name. But I recently got an email and like, hey, we want you to come speak at these schools. It was a big check, man. Lordy, I needed that damn money. It was like, we're going to do 3 speaking engagements and 3 tours, which would have almost made our month, right, for our expenses. But then they gave me like this list of stuff I couldn't say. I couldn't say systemic, right? They didn't want me to mention Chicago Teachers Union. Like, how am I going to talk about Black history in Chicago and not mention Jackie Vaughn? How am I going to talk about Black history in Chicago and not mention Barbara Sizemore? How am I going to have a discussion about education and don't mention Karen Lewis? Like that I can't, right? And so I just decided, like, you know what? Best way to explain anything is a story. I was just saying this yesterday at Northeastern. I had the extreme pleasure of meeting this gentleman named Samuel Black Jr. And Tim Black was a historian here in Chicago. He lived to be 102. And when I first started doing history publicly, somebody had the good sense to take me to sit with him so that he could school me. And I got to sit with him a couple times before he passed. And on our very last conversation, he said, hey, Dilla, y'all got toilet paper in the house? I'm like, yeah, you know, toilet paper over here, bro. I could just run the Family Dollar. He's like, no, I got that. He said, when your wife hit the light switch, does the lights come on? I said, yeah, the lights come on. He said, you know, every now and again, but not all the time. Can you take them kids to Chuck E. Cheese, or can you just take them to go get ice cream and still pay your bills? And I said, yeah. He said, well, that means you got everything you ever gonna need, bro. Yeah. He said, and as long as you remember that, and as you remember that, you never have a price. If you don't have a price, you can never sell out. And so that rings in my brain all the time. I don't have a price. You know, if it end right, I walk out of here right now, nobody wants to hear my voice again. I gotta go find another job and work Uber Eats at night. As long as them kids got toilet paper, light switch work, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, it's like you can provide the rest.
Yeah, I can figure it all out.
Yeah. From your perspective, how has public transit shaped opportunity, migration, and segregation patterns in the city?
It's shaped them all, man. You know, I was saying it on the podcast how I was one of maybe like the first cohort, maybe the second cohort of kids from the Mayor Daley summer jobs in the 90s, right? And I got hired to do like general services at City Hall. So, you know, this is before email, man. So they put like some message in a yellow folder. You have to go read it all around, only give it to the right person. And for the young people in this room, this thing called a fax machine. And I used to have to like send faxes and those type of things. But what I noticed is that I took the train from 79th Street to Washington or something like that to go to City Hall. And it was this cohort of like ladies that all worked downtown at the same time, but they didn't work at the same place. But they rode the train together. I mean, like just that little 45-minute ride, me observing them, they were a family. They solved problems. They grieved together. If somebody called off work, it was a big deal. Like, she didn't tell us she had vacation today, and now they like checking on her and all of these type of things. And then so what I learned from that is, like, man, said I was 14, and I'm like, yo, this is a sense of community on this thing, because they probably met on the train and was a little skittish at first, but at the time they started speaking to each other out of familiarity, and they passed each other the paper. One was responsible for buying the Sun-Times, other one was responsible for buying the Tribune, and they switched off mid-train. Like, my goodness, what does that mean to community, and what resources were they able to share to take back to their respective communities? I'm sure somebody went to somebody's church or synagogue or mosque to be in community with each other. You know, in a city that was, unfortunately, it can still be, have pay disparities, right? So, you know, if you're a Black person on the South Side, you might not be making what a non-Black person on the white side is making per hour. But the train is the equalizer because it doesn't cost based on your income, right? It doesn't, you know, you're not priced out of it. And that allows you to have access to opportunities. And then, you know, it's a poor man's date, right? Drive from 95th Street to Howard, and, you know, you get you 6 wings from Harold's, and y'all sharing the chicken, and y'all riding the train together. That you know, if she willing to just ride the damn train with you, that's probably a solid one to have on your. Absolutely, you know what I'm saying. So, it shaped us in that way, but if it sure shaped segregation too, because, you know, there are times historically, we'll say like the Green Line going out west, well, Blacks knew, like, all right, once we get to this place, let me get away from the door. Because, right, 'cause somebody might throw something in or hit me or do something violent. And so public transportation also helped us become aware of these racial boundaries in our city, for better or for worse. Yeah. Public transportation did that. But I think also, like, it shows us the entrepreneurial spirit, right? It's, you know, the sock man on there selling his socks, the shoes man selling shoes, Waterman, and, you know, right? You know, you learn. What I learned, man, is that was some people's way of paying some bills, you know? Yeah. The brother with the suit used to get on with his hangers and incense and all of that. And one day I sat and talked to him. He was retired. Right, this was just supplemental income, and this was his way of talking to people. You know, it taught you discernment, right? If you were a young kid, and it's this Chicago, man, there are 10-year-olds that take the train to school by themselves, and what they learn is how to judge who to sit next to, who's going to keep them safe. You know, so man, public transportation is powerful.
Absolutely taught me all of those lessons. Like, I've been a South Sider all my life, but I went to school on the North Side. My high school was on the North Side. So when I got up in the morning, it was dark outside. When I got home, it was dark outside. Mm-hmm. So that whole time, like, I'm on the train, hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, like, making this trek. And I had to, like you said, you had to know who to sit next to, who not to sit next to. You know, you should see the demographics change as you go. Mm-hmm. Different people going to work. You know, it was everything. You know, it was like CTA has been a backbone to, like, everything that I've been doing. Like, as I've been growing up and getting older, and it taught me a lot about people, and it taught me a lot about this city. So I'm forever grateful. Yeah, it's a great teacher. It's a great teacher, and I'm still learning things today. So.
A great teacher.
Really stepping out of my comfort zone being here. And I'm like so glad that I'm here with, like, people that I care about and sharing with you. So back to the CTA, man. In this next decade, what would success look like to you once the Red Line Extension project is complete and CTA train service begins to, like, service the far south side of the city?
And I'm glad I was getting ready to, like, jump in before you finish. You was like, in the next decade, what is success? And I was just ready to say, finishing the damn Red Line Extension. But you got to that point for me. If you have an opportunity to take my Roseland Pullman tour, I load a newspaper article from 1967 where they were in the process of planning the Red Line extension to go all the way out south. And what stopped them was the white residents in Roseland said, if the train comes out to 130th, it's already so many Negroes out here, there'll be more. And so they forced their aldermen to block it and so it's been in the making for almost 60 years, right? A little more than 60 years, right? That's insane how long that thing has been dealt with. And I think what people don't understand is if there's 10 quote unquote thugs or gangbangers or whatever nomenclature you want to give them. Nomenclature is a word I picked up from CTA, right? Right. So there's 10 whatever is out in the street. Maybe 2 of them are really about that life, and the other 8 are bored, scared, and don't have an opportunity. So they're just being followers, which at some point we all can kind of relate to having been a follower to something or another, good or bad. And if you're out in Argyle Gardens, if you live on 128th and Parnell, if you live on 121st and Union, your job opportunities are so limited until you have a car.
Yeah.
Right? Because with the games that, can be played with funding and so on and so forth, service lines don't run as often as they did back when we came up. But the job market has switched. So there isn't a whole bunch of just you go to work at 8, you get off at 4, and you got the weekend off anymore for people. Right? That the world has changed, Even if you get a job at White Castles requires every adult do at least 1 weekend of overnights, right? Because it's 24 hours. So every employee that's over 18 has to do at least 1 weekend a month where they're working a night shift. So if that's your job and you live in Argyle Gardens, how in the hell do you get home from working at the McDonald's on Cermak and White Castles on Cermak, right? You can't. You know what I mean? Because it stops at 95th Street, then the trains stagger. And even if you want to take the approach of, get your steps in and walk a couple miles home from 95th Street, Chicago has this shit called winter, right? And it's cold. So that ain't the best course. So just that, right? Just the ability for folks to, the Amazon fulfillment is on 111th over there in Pullman. So again, if you live on 130th, how do you work the night shift at Amazon or any of these places that hire in mass? When I was coming up, if you didn't go to college, but you wanted a livable wage, you worked at one of the call centers out in the burbs. Schaumburg, Woodridge, you know what I mean? Like, how do you get home from that though, right? Without the train, if you're on the far south side, not just them, but the ignored far southeast side, right? Like it's going to bridge a gap for them too, to be able to get access to the jobs, to schooling. The philanthropic arm of the city might say they want to pay for some continuing education courses for folks. But if you can't get to them, that opportunity really ain't doing nothing for you. And so in a decade, when that thing is done, I love how, and if you ain't tell already, I'm gonna say what the heck I want, but I love how, in all of this, top down, CTA, the city, the state, they want minority contractors, they want women-owned contractors to do some of that work to extend the red line, and those are going to be family-sustaining jobs. So, man, when this thing gets finished, not only will it help people economically, but what I led was those 8 followers, they'll have opportunities. Maybe instead of 10 dudes being outside, now it's 4, right? Then the other group start doing good, and you look over, you see your homies doing good. Hey, we hiring over here, and now that starts to pull them in. So I think that's the future in the next decade when this thing is done.
Yeah, I'm absolutely looking to see more things like growing, like far south. I want to see Pullman grow more. I want to see more people come out there. I want the city to move, man. I feel like the CTA is like our it's like the blood that pumps through the city.
Yeah, for sure.
There's people everywhere where they need to go. I hit most of my good questions. So let me ask you this. What's your favorite line? Or what's your favorite bus or train line and why?
My favorite bus line is the 44. And it used to go all the way to the Mart. And so you would see so much of Chicago on that bus line. It railed racing to 47th and it cut over, then it took Halsted all the way up and it cut over when it got downtown and it dropped you off at the Mart, man. And like I said, my favorite thing, she does it now only for me. But when I was a young person, I used to love being on that line because you see the fine sisters. They gym shoes on, and they had that bag with their heels in the bag. I was 15, I was addicted to that. And so, man, I used to just see them walking with their little white shoes and their heels in the bag. I bet she get to work, she gonna put them heels on like. And so the 44 for sure. And then the red line used to be my favorite just because you could hit both ballparks. But then with Madam Prayers, we took the green line. So I've retaken it a couple times. And it's like the views of Chicago that the green line gives you. It almost like puts you in people's houses and their businesses and the church. It's like crazy. So I would say the green line now is my favorite.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Green Line too. I think, like I said, that trip from the south side to the north side, like it actually introduced me to graffiti when I used to see like the sides of buildings and stuff. And like that changed my whole, I was a cartoon comic book guy. And then, that trip up north, like after a year, like I'm writing my name in my sketchbooks and stuff. So it changes everything, bro. It changes everything. I'm gonna ask another question, and then I'm on. How we doing on time? Uh, I'm gonna ask one more question, and we'll take a few from the audience, and maybe Teresa can see if some of our online people might have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
I know you talk to everybody. You're like everywhere and moving around. I get out a little bit, and I bump into you, and I'll know like. If you can talk to anybody, living or not present, and like have a good conversation with them, who would that be and why?
Oh man, especially in Chicago for a book nerd, the list is so long. I can't just say one. One, I would love to talk to Jane Addams and just like kind of understand her motivation behind like modern social work comes from Chicago, right? And how, what made her be so proactive and, it ain't like it made her rich or nothing like that. And so, what was the driving force behind that? And then on the dude side, there's this dude name I never got to meet. He died in like the late 80s, but I was super young. His name is Earl B. Dickerson. And Earl B, man, what he saw, his for his list of firsts is absolutely astonishing. He was the first Black man to graduate University of Chicago Law School. When Hyde Park integrated, first Black dude to move over there. Earl B. Dickerson is the only Black founder of the American Legion. They give us the VFWs. He was the first phone call FDR made when he was establishing his Black Council. And he just was unabashedly about progress. He was in that first class of Black Army officers ever trained at Des Moines, Iowa for World War I. He was the Beta chapter founder of Kappa Alpha Psi. He just had seen so much. He put Harold Washington in play. He put Oscar DePriest in play. He, was really, really good to Tim Black. He I mean, like just the first black man to be elected alderman as a Democrat. And so I would love to talk to Earl B. Dickerson and see like what was that driving force to be so accomplished? You know what I mean? Like I feel like I do stuff every now and again. I'm like, yo, that's pretty dope, Dilla. But his life was just that, and he knew that because he had been blessed, he needed to make progress for marginalized folks. So those would be two people. If you get a chance, look up Jane Addams and look up Earl B. Dickerson.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Yeah.
So we're going to take some questions from the audience, but I do want to let you know that one of our red line extension folks said that the red line will be finished in 4 years. And that was
Right on.
idea of 10 years, right? But Dan Tinsley indicated that. We didn't have any additional questions online, but I'll keep checking with the folks in the back. But do we have any questions from the in-person on? Anyone? Don't be shy. Yes, I know here.
Hey Dilla, thank you for coming to CTA. We really appreciate having you here. Question I have for you is that you're familiar with Daniel Burnham's plan of Chicago.
Yep.
A large part of it focused on equity and mobility throughout our city. You know, I think there was a plan to keep City Hall basically where our office is today, equal equity and access to the lake and greenery everywhere. If that plan ever saw its full, what do you think the city would look like today?
He's referring to the Chicago Plan of 1909. For those who want to look it up, some of the things were kind of implemented, right? Like how when you go by the old post office and it has those roadways under, so everything was kind of supposed to like sprout out from Congress Parkway. The boulevard system, where all the boulevards connect you to huge parks. That was implemented. But I think we'd be a healthier city if he implemented the full plan because our carbon footprint would have been so much lower because of all the green space that now is, roadways and highways and all of that kind of stuff. We don't think about it, but South Side, that bend from downtown where the Dan Ryan takes, it is the reason why that side of town has double the asthma rate than any other side of the city. Because if you're, all the trucks come through that route, right? If you want to sell something in Indiana, you want to sell something in Detroit, and you're in Wisconsin, you got to take that way. 294 is new, right? 394 is new. All these things are very, very new. So from its inception, it was a polluter, and I think the Chicago plan would have assisted mightily in that and lowering that carbon footprint. And then I just think that it would have invoked a lot more civic pride. It called for a lot more public art and public gathering spaces. And while it seems like we have a lot of those, they're kind of in their own silos. You know what I mean? And the Chicago plan called for a lot of our city to be accessible. And then, I think I'll be trying to watch my mouth. Because right now I'm not necessarily in love with Friends of the Park right now because we could have had the dang on Star Wars Museum. What the hell, so on the one hand, the Chicago Plan of 1909 and Montgomery Ward, the dude, is why the lakefront has all that access, right? Wow, we were probably the only major city in America that our lakefront, the entirety of it, is accessible to the public. And so, I think that, further cementing that is a part of the Chicago plan too. And then, Laura Wacker was on that because Charles Wacker was a part of that too. And I think Laura Wacker does a good job of easing some of the congestion for downtown. Yeah. Brother there had a question.
Good afternoon, Malcolm Miller. I'm the atmosphere Chicago born and raised. My question for you is more a social one. What do you think, from your perspective, what makes Chicago such a high school oriented introduction place? Like everyone knows, what high school did you go to?
It's not to say that we're not educated or we don't go into other places, but now
Man, you could be at a college alumni gathering and all the questions will be what high school you went to. I think that's the ultimate Chicago question because it allows for us to know so much about you in one question, right? There are very few exceptions to it. You know, Big Brain over here, Tanika, a couple others, right? But most people in Inglewood don't go to Lane 10, right? And so, you know, if I say, what high school did you go to? And you say CVS, I know you're a South Sider, right? I know that you probably had working class parents. You know, it answers about 4 or 5 questions for me. Conversely, if I say what high school you went to, and you're like Mount Carmel or St. Rita, I had a little bit of money in there, huh? Oh, y'all went to Holy Angels, huh? Okay, that's a 2-parent household. He came. Like it allows for me to have more questions. If you're like, yo, I went to Finger, I'm like, okay, I can't play with him. Keep my jokes to a minimum. I won't go too far with these jokes. But like, I went to Whitney Young. Okay, they think they're better than me. They think they're better than everybody, and not in an arrogant sort of way. They fact.
It's absolutely
Everybody.
fact. It's
You know,
absolutely fact.
I think it just serves, you know, in a city that's very hyper segregated. It lets me find out where you're from, a little bit of your background, a little bit of your economic status. It allows me to check your temperament, all from that one question.
So I'm gonna cut you off and say this starts with what side of town you're from. Especially if you're out of town and you bump into somebody.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, I'm from Chicago." Oh yeah. What side of town you from?
So even then, I say I go straight to high. Hey, I'm from Chicago. Okay, what high school did you go to? I went to Wheaton Warrenville South. Come on, buddy. You're from Oswego, my friend. That kind of thing.
Hi,
Hey.
so you talked a little bit about.
Relate to Sam Greenlee?
Yes, it's my cousin.
Hey, right on. Right on.
You talked a little bit about economic CTA helping in terms of allowing folks to have different economic options, especially with your answer to the red line question. And in this last few days, we've lost Reverend Jesse Jackson. And we know that a big part of with him coming to Chicago and his focus was leveling the playing field and creating access as it relates to economics. How would you hope his historic legacy would be kind of memorialized in the days to come? I know that there's a lot of focus from his family on making sure his international renown is respected. But as it relates to his decision to be here, what would you hope that would look like?
That's a pretty good question. I haven't gave it any thought until now. I know that he was very proud to be a Chicagoan. I know that at a certain point he could have up and left and went anywhere. Might have had an easier route in establishing himself politically, civically, because while he was here, he was up against Richard J. He was up against Michael Blundig. He was up against Jane Byrne. And so, you know, he could have went down to Atlanta and, you know, Andrew Young is the mayor, right? You know, that's your homie and that opens paths for you. So, but I think he respected the grit of Chicago. I think he respected that for many Black folks via the Great Migration, we became diasporic, right? So, though it's Chicago, it could feel like Mississippi or Alabama or Louisiana or Arkansas at any given moment in any given section of town. And so I think we should, particularly as a city, memorialize him and remember that he was here for the little people of Chicago. You know, he supported tons of Chicago causes as it related to pushing people forward, you know, from the Willis wagons. He was on the front line of that. From union busting, and not just people of color, right? But when we get into the Reagan 80s and companies are closing, particularly on the Southeast side, and they're closing and taking people's pensions with them, right? You don't work 30 years, and now the steel mill or steel mill adjacent businesses closing and they're filing bankruptcy. And so now, your 30 years of contribution just up and vanished. He was on the front line for those type of things too. So I think Chicago should just do a good job of memorializing him as Chicago's son. He wasn't born here, but he was proud to be here. And and then also, we can't overlook how much of a safe space he created, particularly when Chicago was at what is at its height in terms of violence, right? If you wanted to escape the violence of the Robert Taylors or the Stateway, every single Saturday you could go to Push and don't get me started because it's like names like Silas Parnell who don't get mentioned enough. Who you think Silas was going to get help to get money to pay for those ACT waivers and college entrance exam waivers? He was going to Jesse. And so I think in the days and weeks and years to come, we should just kind of frame him in the way that we frame like a herald, right? In the way that we frame your cousin, in the way that we frame Oscar Brown Jr. I think in those kind of lenses, that's how we should historically look at Brother Jackson. Yeah.
I have a question from our online audience members. They would like to know if you could extend one of our bus routes, what route would it be and why?
That is good. Right now, the dang on Vincennes. Because if you go to Morgan Park, so Morgan Park got an academic center, right on. Shout out Mustangs. So if you go to Morgan Park, you did the hard work of studying your butt off through fourth, fifth, sixth grade, and then you get into the academic center, and now you go to this big brain AC at Morgan Park, but you live on 79th Street. You got to get up like an hour and a half when it used to be just a straight ride down Vincennes. And if Vincennes had its own independent line, the way that it bisects Chicago, it would also help in the reverse. Because if you're a big brain kid on 111th and you got into Kenwood, right? It's impossible to get to Kenwood from there, but if Vincennes extended fully and just ran its entire length as an independent line, then a person could end up on right, because how Vincennes bisects with Wentworth, and then you'd be able to just jump off right at 55th, and there's one more bus and you straight to school. As it stands now, man, it's like a 2-hour journey. My daughter goes to in Morgan Park Academic Center, and that's how we train the kids, man. We put them on the bus. I follow the bus with the car. I do that 3 times. After that, I ain't doing that no dang on. And she's the first kid that I can't do it with because sometimes it's the hostel that goes that way. It's too infrequent. So I don't know if that's like a personal reason for myself, but I just know that when I'm out there at Meeks Church, that's a discussion that folks have, right? If Vincent just ran his course,
Time for one or two more questions from in audience and online. See your hands, so go ahead.
Yeah, so one of my questions is, what has been one of your favorite books to inform you about Chicago, or like a few different reads that have helped you build such a wide?
Oh yeah. I love Upton Sinclair, The Jungle. I love Devil in White City. I love Donald Miller's City of the Century. Talks about early Chicago. It's really cool. Dominic Pisagna wrote a book called Slaughterhouse. Teaches you about the stockyards and back of the yards in Bridgeport. Dempsey Travis wrote the autobiography of Black Chicago. Man, that thing is fire. I like The Warmth of Other Sun. I like Third Coast. All of these kind of properly etch you into the real fabric of Chicago. There's so many more. Trying to think of the good ones though. Like, I mean, they all good, but some that what's the real cheat code? If you go into Walgreens in any particular neighborhood, while we still have a thing called Walgreens, usually Arcadia Publishing has done a book on that neighborhood, and it's very well sourced because it ain't done by outsiders. Typically, the Rogers Park Historical Society is who they paid to write it, right? So Arcadia Publishing's neighborhood books will really catch you up to speed. Yeah. I was just somebody unmuted.
And then I have a second question.
Yes, ma'am.
With like the knowledge of so much history that's passed in the past, Jesse Jackson, are there any leaders that you look up to in the Chicago community currently?
Man, I do. And I would just, I guess I was at Northeastern's Inner City Studies yesterday having a talk. And so I got to fuss a little bit more because it was an intimate room. And the fact that we say Jesse's name so much is an indictment on us. Because why was our leader 75, right? And he started when he was 25. Like, where are the people in between to fill in the gaps? And when they present themselves, it always turns into a money thing, right? And then, all the good intentions on earth go away because they want a big house, in Wilmette, right? But to answer your question, Sneaker Lewis Johnson is the monster here in Chicago. She just won the MacArthur Genius Award.
Yeah.
The West Side Jamals, right? So there's Jamal Cannon, who he runs this organization called The Block, where he's pulling kids out the street and teaching them how to box. They're over in Humboldt Park. And then Jamal Cannon and Jamal Cole is really, really awesome. Reverend Hatch Jr. is a monumental leader. The current pastor of Trinity, Brother Moss is crazy. Charles Dates over at Progressive is crazy. Rami, man, is Rami a leader over at Inner City Muslim Action Network? Rami is on his stuff, man. Boss Lady. And steadfast in our principles, right? I think those folks, begrudgingly me, people keep trying to make me talk about issues and how I feel, and like I said, I'm biased because my perspective is going to pretty much always be how history shapes now, but it does shape now.
I'm going to take some liberty and take the last question. I have the pleasure of taking your North London tour.
I know.
And during the tour, you told a story of Dr. Martin Luther King. We ended that story by saying sometimes you have to meet people where they are. And I will share that just to say
Yeah.
Just to continue.
I make TikTok for a living. That's what I do. And then Kappa, man, you missed my Earl B. Dickerson story. I was talking about Earl being here. If anybody would know, you would know. But Dr. King was here for the Chicago Freedom Campaign, and what he noticed was that it was a lot of younger ladies, older men, no young men. And what he found out was that the young men didn't really want to hear what he had to say, that they were hanging out at the Vice Lord Pool Hall on 16th Street. So a gentleman by the name of Al Raby accompanies Dr. King against Al Raby's wishes. And they go in, and Dr. King asks for the vice lord that's in charge. He presents himself, and Dr. King challenges him to a game of pool. He said, if I win this game of pool, you got to start bringing the vice lords to come hear me speak. And if you win, I'll give you $150. This was 1966. $150 would have bought you a used car, right? No exaggeration. So King loses, and the vice lords are giving themselves high fives and daps and pounds. But they don't know that he's a pool shark, like one of the best. Like he could have played professional pool because he graduated high school when he was 16. And as a freshman at Morehouse, Nobody talked to the little kid, right? Who gonna hang with a 16-year-old freshman? So he just played pool day and night, day and night, day and night. And so his thing was to throw the first game to get you to relax. And then here come Dr. King. So after the first game, he says, hey, that's double or nothing. But if I win, not only you got to bring the vice lords, you have to bring the people that y'all fight against. You have to go over there and convince them to come with you. For $300, that was too good to be true, so they played him. He kicked Vice Lord butt all up and down the boulevard. And on my tour, it's a very famous shot of Dr. King. I think we selling the shirts outside. He got the pool stick behind his back. That picture that you see was taken on the west side of Chicago, and that was him wrapping up the game, beating the Vice Lords, and they started to come hear him speak. And like I said, the lesson in that is sometimes you got to meet them where they are, all right? But you'll be surprised when you step into their world, they'll be really, really willing to step into yours. Yeah.
Thank you. Such an extraordinary conversation. So now everyone knows why that
Everything dope about America is from Chicago. We got them outside, buy one.
Something to next outside. There are also some refreshments outside. Please feel free to enjoy the refreshments outside. Please don't bring any food into the boardroom. And lastly, Leticia would have my head if I did not mention that she wants to promote that CTA is having a Chicago Bulls Day, March 18th. I think the QR code is on the flyer outside, but there's also emails and the CTA app. So please support that event. Her team and her a lot of trouble to get that to happen. There's a that comes with the ticket. So please support that. Again, thank you to our guest speakers, y'all.
Yo,
Thank you.